Everybody, peace. Welcome to the Started Broadly Basketball Show. Wherever have you're listening, we're so grateful to have you with us. As you guys know, I'm your host, Sean Cottle. And listen, guys, we're gonna be covering perhaps the biggest news that has occurred in the NBA all year long, and that's James Harden being traded to the LA Clippers. And initially I wasn't even planning on doing a show today. But after I got out of workouts, I checked my phone and I saw the news of James Harden being traded to the Clippers, and I said to myself, all right, we're going to have to cover this today. So that's why we have a live show today. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Before we get started, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you guys can see update on our latest content. But let's go and get right into it, guys. We're going to dive right into it. As you guys know, if you haven't heard already, James Harden has been traded from the Philadelphia 76ers to Los Angeles Clippers in a blockbuster trade. The 76ers sent James Harden, PJ Tucker, and Philip Petrusev to the Clippers in exchange for Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, KJ Martin, a 2028 unprotected first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, a 2029 pick swap, and an additional first-round pick from the OKC Thunder. Listen, right off the bat, we talked about this on our show about a week ago about how there was no way that James Harden was going to be playing in Philadelphia this season in any form or capacity. I talked about how before he started making demands to be traded, how I respected his professionalism in terms of him showing up to work on time, showing up to work so he could get paid and not being a distraction. But then, however, he requested the trade, and then he was away, skipping practice, and it seemed like the writing was on the wall that he'd be out of Philadelphia. And really what happens is Philly has now they were pigeonholed into one position to where they have to trade Harden, because with Nick Nurse in, you're establishing a new culture, you're setting a new precedent. You want to establish a new precedent now where you're saying to the rest of the organizations, the players, that listen, one player is not going to determine the direction or the environment of this culture. And so that's what James Harden was doing, and so you have to get rid of that if you're Philadelphia. And remember, guys, I was telling you that I have inside sources from the NBA that were telling me that this trade would have happened back in June if not for James Harden's perceived attitude from the rest of the league. Because what happens is a lot of GMs and owners don't want to have to deal with this headline, with this perceived headache that James Harden could bring in terms of being toxic to the culture, toxic to the locker room. Listen, if James Harden didn't have a reputation for quitting on teams and forcing his way out of different organizations, he would have been traded back in June, right when he first signed the extension. But the reason it took so long for this deal to get done is because a lot of GMs, a lot of owners don't want to have to deal with this headache. And remember, a couple months ago, guys, we talked about I supposed that Indiana could have been a possible trade destination for Harden because they had assets in Buddy Hield and Miles Turner they could trade to Philadelphia that they'd be compensatory. And also, there are some teams in the NBA that are okay with not being a playoff team and not being in the lottery. They're content with being middle of the pack, with not having really what we perceive as a sense of direction. They're fine with being in no man's land. And so what Indiana would have been able to do, they'd have been able to get James Harden. It would have been an attraction. They'd have brought in more tickets, more fan base, more fan turnout. However, I do highly doubt that James Harden would have stayed in Indiana. He probably would have requested a buyout. That's why I thought Indiana was an ideal option. And then, rumors of him being traded to the Clippers came about, and then we know that the Clippers initially rejected the trade given by Philadelphia. And from there, it seemed there was a foregone conclusion that James Harden would somehow be staying in Philly. And I thought the same thing until he started skipping practice and made it very clear that he didn't want to be there anymore, even after the comments he made in China about Daryl Morey. And now I'm just getting about on the basketball aspect. So I want to stick to like the cultural aspect of this. is what happens now is this is James Harden's third time he's forced a trade out of an organization. And so what happens now is you're starting to enable what's perceived as bad behavior. You're starting to enable this bad behavior, and it's so ironic with the CBA now being, they're creating a new CBA, and this happens, and I was extremely surprised when the new CBA came out that there wasn't any sort of new guideline or regulation for star players forcing their way out of organizations. And it's so interesting that that this stuff still goes on, man. And listen, I get it. Being a professional athlete, you want to put yourself in the best environment to win, and you're willing to do what it takes, right? But there also has to be a balance of honoring the contract that you agreed to, right? And listen, I completely understand from what my sources tell me. Everyone in the league believes James Harden when he says that Daryl Morey lied to him. But one bad behavior doesn't beget another. So there has to be some sort of accountability and professionalism that you hold yourself to. And it's unfortunate James Harden hasn't particularly done that. But one thing I do respect though is, when James Harden is there, he's present. He doesn't lax. He does practice, and when he's mentally there. But you just hate to see incidents like this. But Philly did manage to make a trade. But like I said, they didn't really have a choice. And the Clippers pretty much told Philadelphia that this is the best offer you're gonna get. Make this offer now, because if you try to trade James Harden with 60 and 55 games left in the season, the value is going to diminish. So why not trade him now, get something for it, and now you can start shopping around for another star player. And so what this now means for specifically Philadelphia is that this isn't the only, I can guarantee you this is not the only trade that Philadelphia is going to make this season. I'm not saying they're going to make another trade within the next 2 weeks, but I guarantee you they'll make another trade before the trade deadline comes later on in February. Because now what happens is you get these draft picks and you get a couple veteran players. Now you can go back to Indiana now and try to shop for a Buddy Hield. Maybe go to Chicago. We see what's going on in Chicago. They just had a players only meeting 2 weeks into the season. I've never seen that before. And maybe shop for DeMar DeRozan, who has not agreed to a contract extension yet. Maybe shop for Zach LaVine, who has expressed frustration with the direction of the organization. Maybe you go and shop for Trae Young, perhaps. These are things that you possibly could do if you're Philly now. Try and get another star player to keep James Harden, because what happens now is you're either gonna have to trade for a star player this season to try to win now, or you tell Joel Embiid that, hey, we're gonna try and get another all-star player this off season. But does that guarantee Joel Embiid is going to stay? Personally, I don't think it does. Philadelphia is on very thin ice, and they're running the risk of losing Joel Embiid in free agency, and it'll be extremely unfortunate, because then now the entire process would have been for naught. This decade-long process would have been for naught. However, something that also was more incentive for Philly to make this trade is the fact that Tyrese Maxey was just named Eastern Conference Player of the Week. And something that I've been talking about for the past 2 years was Tyrese Maxey's ability to play off the ball was phenomenal. And I told people this, that if you can put Tyrese Maxey on the ball, make him your primary point guard, give him more possessions to be the primary decision maker, playmaker, he's going to evolve and develop into a commensurate all-star level player based on the way the point guard position is played today in the NBA. And that's what we're seeing now. With James Harden not playing the first couple games this year in Philly, it has allowed Tyrese Maxey to be that primary ball handler and to make more plays, to be more of a playmaker as opposed to a slasher. And because he's improved his off-ball shooting, his shooting off the catch, and his shooting off the dribble, he's now more efficient. And now defense have to play him more honestly. And now when it comes with ball screens, they have to go over those screens as opposed to go under. And now it makes it that much more easier for him to make plays because of his speed. And so now we're seeing Tyrese Maxey start to develop and take that next step in his game. And now he looks like an all-star level player. Tyrese Maxey could very well be an all-star this season for the Eastern Conference, especially with the NBA going back to the Eastern and Western Conference format, thankfully. My goodness. And like I said, he could very well be an all-star, all-star level player this season, based on what we've seen so far from this first week. And Philadelphia saw that and said to themselves, okay, we trust Tyrese Maxey's ability to be our primary ball handler, and we trust the pieces around Joel Embiid. Let's make this trade now. Let's do it right now. Let's make this trade, and let's get something out of this. Because with Nick Nurse being the first year head coach, it is so important to establish culture correctly. We talked about the importance of establishing culture for the collegiate, professional, or at high school level, how it takes about 4 years to establish culture. And the first year of establishing culture in a new program is always spent just clearing dead weight, clearing out the people from the old regime, whether it be coaches, players, whatever, that don't align with your culture now. And James Harden doesn't align with the culture that Nick Nurse has in Philadelphia now. And so you have to be willing to part ways with that, because no one player, and you see this more in college, not so the NBA, but more so in college, no one player will ever outweigh the importance of a culture. I don't care how good you are as a player. You'll never be more important than the culture. And obviously there's a little more nuance to that in the NBA, because you got guys that are non-per-real talented and, the elite 0.01%. But this is another example where James Harden isn't at that level anymore to say, listen guys, we're just going to have to figure this out. We're not trading James Harden. He's too talented. He's not at that level anymore. So now Philadelphia's more willing to stand firm on their culture and say, hey, we're going to have to get rid of you. And that's completely okay. I think that's totally fine. And now we get James Harden and with the Clippers. And when we did our preseason, our preview for the season a couple weeks ago, I talked about how I like the Clippers roster and how it was constructed. However, I need to wrap my head around and see how this roster with James Harden and Russell Westbrook and Paul George and Kawhi is going to look. I mean, listen, you can't put James Harden off the ball. We saw how that it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, because in every instance where James Harden had the option to play off the ball, he didn't. When James Harden was with Chris Paul in Houston, Chris Paul moved off the ball. When James Harden was with Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn, Kyrie moved off the ball. And here in Philly, obviously, he had the ball. Maxey moved off the ball. And so now it gets to the Clippers. So now you're going to move Russ off the ball again, PG off the ball again, and Kawhi off the ball. Who those two guys, PG and Kawhi, are comfortable playing off the ball because they're two-way players, and they can shoot off the catch, and they can play in the high mid post and the low post. They're a little more versatile in their offensive game. But with Westbrook now, listen, Westbrook plays better on the ball. I don't think anyone's going to question that. No one's going to debate that part right there. However, we have seen what Westbrook can do off the ball when he was with the Lakers. And obviously, a completely different dynamic. Being the third wheel with LeBron James, you're always going to get the brunt of the scrutiny and the criticism. That's just how it is. So it'll be a little different. We'll say that he were with the Clippers when he is the third option or fourth option, whatever. And however, we saw with how he does playing off the ball, and I don't know what Westbrook is not a good enough shooter off the catch to put him off the ball, but you're not gonna put James Harden off the ball either. So I'll be interested to see how Ty Lue, from a basketball standpoint, gets this to work. And defensively, how does this work? If I had to guess, I would say that they probably move Westbrook to the bench and have him be the sixth man. Because remember, last season when he was playing the sixth man position for the Lakers, he was going to win sixth man of the year if he didn't get traded and he stayed in that sixth man role. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how that works from a basketball standpoint. And yeah, that's the one thing I'll be looking forward to seeing. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. What are your guys' thoughts on the James Harden trade? I mean, what did you see, or what are your guys' expectations? Were you surprised by the trade? Do you guys like the trade? Who do you guys think won the trade? We're actually gonna discuss that in the next segment of our of this show. Who actually won the James Harden trade? But leave your thoughts in the chat room. I'd love to hear all about it. Let me know what you guys think about the trade. So guys, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back in like 30 seconds. Be sure to stick around. We're gonna talk about who won the trade. Clippers, Sixers. Who won the trade? So be sure to stick around, guys. Be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed the first segment of our show, we just discussed our initial reaction to the James Harden trade, this blockbuster trade that occurred in the NBA with James Harden being sent to the Los Angeles Clippers in exchange for Nicholas Batum and Robert Covington and Marcus Morris and KJ Martin and a couple of 2028 and 2029 picks as well. But in this segment, guys, I want to talk about who actually won the trade, who won this James Harden trade, and who is now set up to win right away, and who's more likely to procure the most success from this trade. So let's go ahead and get right into it, guys. And while this segment's going on, be sure to share your thoughts, guys. Who do you guys think won the trade? And what player does this benefit most? What team does this benefit most? And how does this shape the landscape for the NBA as a whole? Be share your thoughts. I would love to hear all about it. Just share your thoughts while we're talking through this segment right here. But who won the James Harden trade? Listen, right away, I know the old adage is always that, listen, whoever received the best player won the trade. Normally that's how you can gauge in the NBA, at least, who won the trade, which team got the best player, and that's it right there. And it's not too far off, but let's look at where each team is now. Now that the dust has settled, where each team is at looking forward, right? So if you're Philadelphia, you're looking forward into the future and you're saying, okay, we've got these picks, got a couple veteran players. We have seen how we competed competed against Milwaukee on the first game of the season, a game that we should have won if we're Philadelphia. So we're saying to ourselves, okay, we might be able to compete to come out of the Eastern Conference, but we're still missing one key piece. So now if you're Philadelphia, you're saying, okay, we've got the picks and we got the veteran players. Maybe we can make a trade for an all-star this season. And if not, we've got to do something in the offseason, or we're going to lose. We're going to lose the second best player in the league or the third best player in the league in Joel Embiid. And so that's where you're at if you're Philadelphia. So you are running the risk, high risk, high reward, running the risk of losing Joel Embiid. And and like I said with Giannis, listen, the only thing that's going to keep these guys with the organizations that they're in is winning championships. Signing Damian Lillard and Giannis agreeing to an extension is going to keep Giannis in Milwaukee. What's going to keep Giannis in Milwaukee is winning a championship. Same thing with Joel Embiid. Listen, these guys are at points in their careers where they've got MVPs, they've got Defensive Player of the Years, they've got the accolades. Now they want the chips. They want to win. And that's what it's going to take to get these guys to keep the guys to stay. And it's that simple. So James, so the Sixers are going to have to do something to win right now, and so that's where you're at. If you're the Sixers, you have to win in order to keep Joel Embiid. That's the only way. That's the only way you're going to do it. And if you're the Clippers, you say, listen, okay, look, now we are completely all in on this Kawhi Leonard and Paul George experiment. Listen, they're healthy right now. This is our biggest window since the first year they got to the Clippers to win. We've got our vocal leader in Westbrook now. We've got our coach in Ty Lue. We've got a bench. We've got our backup point guard in Bones Highland. We've got the pieces, and so you add James Harden to the mix, and you think to ourselves, okay, this is win now. This is it. This is win now. This is now or never. So I do believe that both teams are in win now mode. Who's more primed to win? Listen, if you look at the Eastern Conference, the way it's set up, you got Boston, you got Milwaukee, and then who's the third best team in the Eastern Conference? Philly, New York, Cleveland. I mean, listen, I'm taking. There's only two teams that I'm definitively taking over Philly in the Eastern Conference. That's Boston and that's Milwaukee at this point in time. But if you're the Clippers and look at the Western Conference, who am I definitively taking over the Clippers right now? With the way their roster is currently constructed. Denver, perhaps. Denver will be the only team. And that's because I've seen Denver play. And Denver could very well repeat, and no one's talking about that. After watching the NBA for a week and a half now, Denver could very well repeat because they look like a well-oiled machine right now. And that's just something I've seen. But right now, the Nuggets are really the only team that I'm definitively taking over the Clippers right now. I wouldn't take Phoenix over the Clippers right now. I wouldn't take Golden State. I wouldn't take Sacramento. I wouldn't take Memphis. I wouldn't take New Orleans. I wouldn't take. Yeah, I wouldn't take the Lakers. I wouldn't. I can't think of any team outside of Denver that would definitively take over the Clippers right now. And so we're at that point now. And so I say to myself, I trust Ty Lue to figure out. Sometimes you just gotta figure it out, right? A good example of that was with Kyrie and James Harden and Kevin Durant. We know that was a failed experiment. But listen, when they all three played together, I believe they only lost one game over the course of 30. Throughout the time, they played like 35 games in total together, all three of them. I think they only lost one of those games. And if I'm wrong about that stat, one of you guys can correct me. But with the same aspect, and no one's going to question Ty Lue's a much better coach than Steve Nash. You just figure it out. These guys figure it out. Listen, these guys, we talk a lot about how James Harden and Westbrook, they're ball dominant, right? And they don't like playing off the ball, which may be true, but that doesn't mean you don't have basketball IQ. Where the issue becomes is, are you willing to make sacrifices? And I think that they both achieved a huge amount of success with the style of basketball that they played, though it wasn't conducive to winning. But because they received so much individual success, they weren't willing to make changes during the prime of their career. But now that they're both a little older, I think that they're both going to be willing to make changes and to make adaptations, not necessarily to their game, but to acclimate to the program, to the culture, to the organization, the framework of the way Clippers basketball is played. And I think they'll be able to buy in. And I believe that the Clippers have now established a strong sense of culture with Ty Lue going into, I believe, his 4th year now being their head coach. And they've got, like I said, Kawhi and Paul George is their 4th year there. The culture now has been established. And so now anyone that comes in, they're going to keep the guys accountable to come in and say to them, okay, you've got to come in, and this is the standard, this is the culture, this is what it's going to be, and you have to abide by it or not. And so now they've got guys that can keep other players accountable, and if you're the Clippers, you're happy about that. And the Clippers, I believe, won the trade because they're in better position to win now, which is what it takes to keep all of these guys. It's just with Philadelphia, that risk of losing Joel Embiid is far too high for me to say that they won the trade. So I think for the Clippers, you did win the trade. However, there is a lot of pressure now on James Harden because now, listen, this is your Brooklyn. This is your 3rd team in 4 years. You're the one, the common denominator. People are already starting to say you are the issue. I won't go that far because I do believe there was some sort of handshake agreement with Daryl Morey and James Harden that was not agreed to. However, like I said earlier, it doesn't justify the action. But you have pressure now for James Harden to win now. If you're the Clippers, you have pressure to win now. If you have wait for Paul George or Kawhi Leonard, you have pressure to win now. You have to win now. And this is the most pressure that James Harden has ever had in his career. More than in Houston with Chris Paul, more than in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. This is the most amount of pressure he's ever had to win. And we're going to see if he's able to rise up at age 33. But this is win now. And best believe that James Harden is going to get the blame. James Harden is going to get the blame if the Clippers do not win a championship. I'm not saying it's deserved. I'm not saying that he'll be the number one reason, but he will get the blame if they don't win a championship because he has been the common denominator on every single team that he's forced to trade out of. He's forced to trade out of Houston, forced to trade out of Brooklyn, forced to trade out of Philadelphia. Eventually, you start to become the common denominator, and people ask yourself, okay, what are you doing wrong as opposed to these organizations? And I'm not even saying that's the right thought process. I'm not even saying that that's justified. I'm just saying it is what it is. That is going to be the case. James Harden will be the number one person to blame if the Clippers do not win a championship. And listen, they're healthy now. What have we always said for the past 3 years? When healthy, the Clippers are perhaps the best team in the NBA. We have been saying that for the past 3.5 to 4 years since Paul George and Kawhi got to the Clippers. But it's such a big if they're healthy, if they can play such amount of games together, if they can build the chemistry. So many ifs. At some point in time, you just have to do it. And listen, Steve Ballmer has deep pockets. We see that. He's with what he's been willing to invest and the trades he's been willing to make. He's willing on going all in and winning now. But I will say this: if the Clippers can just get one championship out of this Paul George Kawhi Leonard experiment, then it'll be worth it. Same with the Lakers. They made this big trade for Anthony Davis. They brought in LeBron James. You get one chip. It's a bubble championship, so there's a big asterisk next to it. But they get the chip, and it's worth it. I know the Lakers are a whole different conversation because AD has to be the best player on that team, but he hasn't shown the consistency to be the best player on a championship team, so that's a whole different dynamic, a whole different conversation. But if you're the Clippers, you have to win right now. What else do you need? What else would you have to do in order to get a better version of this team? And there's not really much else. So the Clippers are in win now mode, which is why I do believe the Clippers, like I just said, are primed and are in a much better position to win right now than the Sixers are. The only team I would definitively take over the Clippers right now, only because of chemistry, and I've seen them play, is Denver in the Western Conference. And if you're Philadelphia, listen, I would take Boston and Milwaukee definitively over Philadelphia. But the risk of losing Joel Embiid if you don't win now is just so high, far too high. They're teetering right now, Philadelphia, on that edge of rebuilding or winning now. And we see how quick windows can close in the NBA. And I'm worried that the window is closed just like that for Philadelphia to win. And if I was a betting man, if I had to take a bet who's more likely to win a championship right now this season, Clippers or Philadelphia, yeah, I would go with the Clippers. And that kind of right there alone says all you need to know about who won this trade for the long term and for the short term. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room. I would love to know what you guys think, because a lot of people say, well, listen, James Harden is just too big of a locker room issue. You don't want to have that in your culture. And listen, you guys know how I am on establishing culture as an organization, but sometimes you have to be willing to do what it takes to win. And like I said, Ty Lue has been with the Clippers for 4 years now. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have been with the Clippers for 4 years now, so they have already established a culture there. So now what happens when new guys come in, the players can now keep new players accountable and say, okay, listen, this is our culture, this is the standard, this is the accountability that we're going to have for each other. And if you're not willing to follow it, then you can leave. And so that's why the culture has been established better. It's more concrete with the Clippers as opposed to Philadelphia, they have a new regime with Nick Nurse, which is why I believe that the culture in Clippers is already established, so you're already more inclined to set yourself up for victories as opposed to, building the culture in that first year. So, I believe that the Clippers won this trade, but let me know what you guys think in the chat room. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you guys think the Clippers won the trade? Do you guys think that the Sixers won the trade? Who does this benefit the most from a player perspective? If you ask me, I think this trade most benefits Kawhi Leonard. I think this trade most benefits Kawhi Leonard because it takes more pressure off of him. We know that it's still, without a doubt, emphatically, Kawhi Leonard is still the best player on this Clippers team. I still think Kawhi Leonard is the top 10 player in the NBA. I think he's top 5 in my opinion when healthy. But I think it takes pressure off Kawhi Leonard and allows him to rest during the season, which is something he likes to do. So he's prepared come playoff time. And it gives him another playmaker that can help get him in easier scoring opportunities. So this benefits Kawhi Leonard the most from a player perspective. But let me know what you guys think. Who does this benefit the most? Does it benefit Joel Embiid? Now he gets Philly to himself now, or gives him an opportunity to explore free agency. Does it benefit James Harden because now this is where he wants to be? Does it benefit Tyrese Maxey because now Tyrese Maxey gets to be a primary ball handler in Philadelphia? Does it benefit Russell Westbrook? Does it benefit Paul George? Who does this trade benefit the most from a player perspective? Leave your thoughts in the chat room, guys. I would love to hear all about it. But like I said, personally, from my perspective, I think that this benefits James Harden. Sorry, this benefits Kawhi Leonard the most from a player perspective, and I believe that the Clippers won this trade as a whole. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room. And defensively, if you're the Clippers, how does this work? I like I said, I think that knowing what I know, I would have to think that this moves Russell Westbrook to the bench and moves him to the 6-man position, which only makes the Clippers that much better. And then when you sit down and think about it, the way this roster is constructed now for the Clippers, does it not kind of look like OKC with Harden and Westbrook and Durant? You got two outstanding guards. One that more than likely is going to come off the bench. An all-star, all-NBA swingman, Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, choose your pick. A rim protector, Zubac. Length that comes off the bench with Plumlee. Listen, this the way this Clippers roster is constructed is eerily similar to the OKC rosters with, like I said, with Durant and Harden and Westbrook. So that's very interesting to see as well. And I thought it's interesting how things come full circle. But thinking about that just reminds you how much talent was on that OKC team, and the way that how good of a GM Sam Presti is, honestly. But I don't want to dive too much into that. But that was something that stood out to me as well, that the way this roster is currently constructed is eerily similar to the old OKC rosters. But like I said, guys, I do believe that James Harden makes the Clippers better, and I do believe Ty Lue is going to figure out how to make it all work together. Because I think Ty Lue is one of the best coaches in the NBA. I think the Clippers won the trade, and if you're Philadelphia, you have to win now, but you have to make a trade. Guys, I can guarantee you that the Sixers will make a trade before the trade deadline for an all-star, and then they'll go out shopping for another all-star during this offseason. But honestly, that doesn't mean anything if they can't win now this season some way or another. Because even if you get the all-stars, that's to me, that's not going to guarantee that Joel Embiid's going to stay. Like I said, the only thing that's going to guarantee Joel Embiid to stay is if they win a championship. That's the only thing. That's the only thing. Because with Joel Embiid, you've seen it so many times, you kind of start to get tired of it. You've seen it with the Ben Simmons situation. You've seen it with Doc. And you've seen it now with James Harden. You just become numb to it, and you get tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. And that's what causes players to leave organizations. That's what happened with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant realized that he couldn't win a championship with Russell Westbrook as his primary decision maker, and he said, I want to leave. I want to play a different brand of basketball. I want to improve myself as a player, and I'm not doing that here. Let me go to Golden State. And that's what's going to happen. And if you had to ask me right now, I believe that Joel Embiid will be leaving Philadelphia next season. Because I just don't see how you can keep him unless you win a championship now. But your roster isn't constructed to win a championship now. It's constructed to make more trades. So that's why I also believe the Clippers won this trade, because they're primed to win now. But they have to win now. James Harden has all the pressure on him now, but I think it's okay because he's got the pieces around him to help take pressure off of him on the court. But off the court, he's going to have all the pressure to win. He has to win now, because if you don't win now, the pressure is on him, because he's once again the common denominator for James Harden. But like I said, let me know what you guys think in the chat room. What do you guys think about this? Who do you guys think won the trade? who does this benefit most as a player? Like I said, I think the Clippers won the trade, and I think this benefits Kawhi Leonard the most from a player perspective. And after that, I think it benefits Tyrese Maxey the most. But that's it for our show for today, guys. Like I said, I wasn't even planning on doing a show today, but I wanted to cover this so you guys would be able to, hear my thoughts, my insight, and also share your thoughts in the chat room as well. And we'll be back again, guys. Same time tomorrow, our usual time slot, 12 p.m. And we'll talk about this James Harden trade as well a little bit more. But if you haven't already, guys, be sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay updated on all related content that we post daily. And if you'd like to follow us on Patreon, you can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in "Sorry to Bother You" show. That way you can gain access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/sorry to bother you show/tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/sorry to bother you show/tip. Listen, none of this is possible without you guys as fans, so we're so grateful and honored for all the love and support that you show us, and it's a pleasure to have this platform to provide insight on the world of sports from a pro-truth, unbiased perspective, something that unfortunately you don't see as much in the media these days. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Like I said, we'll be back again same time tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and until next time, guys, peace.